You're listening to the P.A.C.E Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's February the 3rd, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Education and News. We're live here at paceradio.net and 420pace.ca. Good morning, Rev Cindy. How you doing?
Good morning, Al. I'm doing well, and yourself?
Oh, I'm not doing too bad. You know, I'm trying to figure something out. Here we go. I've been going through this cold, minus 20s, feeling like minus 35 type weathers. You know what we got in the forecast for today? Rain.
Same here.
Like,
yeah, we've had minus 15 to 20 before the wind chill here. And today we have +2 and drizzle.
I know, eh? Just crazy. But, yeah, you know, hey, it's Canadian weather. You know, my dog's already starting to shed. You can see the little puffs.
The groundhogs from yesterday are wrong then.
Yeah. No, isn't there a lobster down your end of the country?
I think so. I think I saw something about that online. I saw the groundhog that they have out, but then I saw something about how the whatever lobster there, Larry the lobster or something like that, agreed with Shubenacadie Sam that there's going to be 6 more weeks of winter.
Yeah, it was a picture I saw, and it showed North America, and it showed all the groundhogs and what all the groundhogs predicted, and there was a picture of a lobster there. I'm going, what?
Nova Scotia.
Oh, well, what can you do? All right, what do you say if we get on with the news?
Might as well get on with the news.
All right, first story's up.
Coming to us from Marijuana Moment, World Health Organization review could lead to international rescheduling of coca leaves.
When I read this headline, I went, wow, holy smokes, this is a change. Let's see what they have to say. There's a leaf. Okay, calls to eradicate coca fields in the Peruvian Andes began a century ago as part of a mission civil soteris led by Genist Unique Paz Solden. Long before concern over cocaine and the subsequent United States abetted drug war, it says that we have awaited with folded arms a divine miracle to free our indigenous population from the deteriorating action of coca. We will be renouncing our position as men who love civilization, he once said.
Wow. For 8,000 years, indigenous communities have chewed coca leaves, but 20th century elites in Lima, like the Spanish conquistadors, when they first arrived on the continent, identified coca chewing as culturally and spiritually integral to a way of life different from their own. And the consumption of the coca, illiteracy, and a negative attitude to the superior culture are closely intertwined, said a 1947 report by the Peruvian Education Ministry.
This spurred the United Nations to dispatch a team of supposed experts to investigate the coca chewing problem. 2 years later, leading the international body to demand the suppression of coca cultivation to eradicate a social evil. A global ban on chewing it was implemented through the UN Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs in 1964. leaving coca under such a restrictive drug control regime that researchers, even today, often find it impossible to source the understudied leaves.
This is really interesting.
Mhm.
Similar patternistic calls would attempt to justify the later global drug war, but 75 years on from the UN's first diktats on coca, the organization's health authority is set to publish its critical health review of the evidence underpinning the Schedule I status of the mildly stimulating medicinal plant rich in calcium and iron after a request from Bolivia and Colombia to end its international prohibition. And indigenous advocates have been prominent in building momentum for these countries. Coca is already legal in Bolivia. In Colombia, consumption is only permitted with indigenous communities to make that request. This is a David and Goliath battle against colonialism. David Cutidor, who is the director of an indigenous-owned coca beer company, Coca Nasa, told the Times of London in September. He also says, "We're saying enough is enough."
Colombian botanist Oscar Perez of Kew Garden sees coca as the world's most misunderstood plant. Sorry. It is not fair that the coca plant is so demonized, he told American Future in November. In European countries, especially in the Schengen area, all cocoa species are classified as illegal, even if it is not known whether they are used to produce cocaine. In fact, I couldn't take a leaf from here to do research. It's ridiculous. But change may be on the horizon. The World Health Organization review could potentially lead the UN Commission on Narcotic Drugs to recommend a reduction in the classification of coca, from which both cocaine and Pepsi Cola derive key ingredients under drug control treaties, or even decriminalization.
Yeah, this is the coca leaf. Bolivia's representative to the UN, Diego Perry, said in November at the UN in New York, holding one aloft from a pile in front of him, just like former President Evo Morales did in the conference hall in 2013. But unlike Morales, Perry then put the leaf into his mouth. "We remove the stem and chew the leaf and put it to the side of our cheek," he said, demonstrating.
Yeah, that's exactly how Dana does it. Yeah,
Yep.
that's right. That's what we watched him do one day during the show. Perry goes on to say that we need to demystify all of the narratives that have been developed over the years about the coca leaf. The indigenous communities recognize the coca leaf not just as a plant, but as a means of spiritual connection that allows them to be in harmony with nature and their ancestors. The World Health Organization has three most likely options. Conclude that the coca leaf should remain in Schedule 1, recommend transfer to the less restrictive Schedule 2, or recommend the removal of coca from the treaty schedules altogether.
The views in the past that led to coca's current classification are indefensible on the basis of today's scientific, ethical, and legal standards, Martin Jelsma, who is the program director at the Transitional Institute, which is a progressive think tank. He said, if the WHO fails to call for a change, the agency risks losing credibility with regard to fulfilling its treaty mandate objectively and showing respect for the indigenous rights. Governments defending the status quo, he added, fear that changing the status of the coca leaf could become a precedent for questioning the classification of several other drugs, marking the beginning of the end of the global prohibition regime. Pardon me again. Can I just re-say that? Marking the end of this ridiculous war on drugs. There is much at stake, and the coca review will be a hot topic in the UN corridors this whole year.
Back in 1949, after the UN dispatched its team to investigate, the mission leader immediately revealed the agenda at an airport press conference. Howard Fonda, who was also vice president of the American Pharmaceutical Association, claimed that coca chewing was not only indefinitely harmful and delirious, but the cause of racial degeneration of many population groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, our studies will confirm the truth of our statements, and we hope to be able to submit a rational plan of action to secure the total eradication of this precarious habit, he says.
Is this ringing any memory banks of other plants that might have been
Yes.
fought for?
It sure has.
The subsequent 1950 UN Commission on the Inquiry of the Coca Leaf Report recommended the suppression of coca use. Psychiatrist and criminologist Pablo Wolff, who worked on the report, later became head of WHO's expert committee on addiction-producing drugs. He characterized people who chew coca as apathetic, lazy, insensitive, befogged. A 1952 WHO paper later said, "We are convinced that coca leaf chewing is a social evil. The chronic consumption of these leaves constitutes a social poison which undermines the physical and mental health of the population and lowers its morale and economic level."
Initiatives to control coca cultivation are subsequently attempted, but not on a historically significant scale. Yet the groundwork of the systematic and destructive U.S.-funded cocoa extraction campaign that would arrive in the 1980s had been laid before the anti-drug campaign hugely exacerbated the civil war in Colombia. Over several decades, more than 260,000 people were killed, with 7 million forced from their homes. The U.S. pumped $1 trillion into the drug war, and plenty of it ended up enriching Colombian, Peruvian, and Bolivian elites to the detriment of others.
Most Colombians have never seen, let alone used, cocaine. And there they suffered a real war on drugs, anthropologist Wade Davis told Filter. Davis told the history of coca in his best-selling 1996 book, One River, in part leading him to be made an honorary citizen of Colombia in 2018. "I think what keeps the market going is the money, not the lousy drug." Coca, on the other hand, is not just of spiritual importance to Andean people, but integral to their diet, which traditionally lacks a calcium-rich dairy source, added Davis, who worked on a 1975 nutritional study of the coca leaf at Harvard's Botanical Museum.
Yeah, he says, what we found absolutely horrified our backers at the U.S. government. Turns out cocoa is chock full of vitamins and has more calcium than any other plant ever studied by science, which made it perfect for a diet that traditionally lacked a dairy product. Compared with an average 10 cereals, cocoa was higher in protein, fat, fiber, ash, calcium, phosphorus, iron, vitamin A, riboflavin, and vitamin C, the 1975 study found.
Wow. All of this will be considered by WHO, though it is unlikely to assess the potential harm reduction role of coca. Small numbers of people experiencing addiction to powder or crack cocaine have found benefit in using coca as a safer alternative, and many more could be ushered towards it through legalization. At the Taquiwazi Retreat Center in Peru, people with substance use disorders are treated with coca leaves as part of a wider rehabilitation regime, including other Amazonian psychoactive plants. Coca provides balance, stimulates dream production. It is a toner. It also calms physical and emotional pain. It allows wounds to heal. And this is written by founder Dr. Jax Mabbitt. It allows you to focus and align on all levels.
The WHO review will not lead to any re-examination of the laws governing the use of cocaine, though there are growing calls for a legal, regulated market in the face of global demand that fuels violence over control of the trade and incentivizes production of riskier versions of the drug. The gains of any policy liberalization would include economic benefits to the Andean communities. Now, Steve Rolls, a senior policy analyst at Transform Drug Policy Foundation, he says that there is a precedent within the treaties for having the plant versions of drugs unscheduled, whereas the extracted drugs are scheduled. Yeah, with cannabis, it was illegal recreationally, but there's treaties that allow it for the medical end of things.
Yep.
And that's where people were going with it with Canada at one time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rolls has been campaigning for a legal regulated market for cocaine that could include milder forms of the drug in gum, lozenge, and snus-like forms. If WHO's coca leaf health risk evaluation were meaningful and honest, he added, coca would be removed from the schedules altogether. Even if WHO does recommend rescheduling, however, Rolls envisions the U.S. and other prohibitionist countries would rally significant support to vote against the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. Any change in scheduling of the coca leaf would be seen as a threat to sort of drug war norms around cocaine and crack.
But meanwhile, the cocainized energy drinks have been hitting shelves, and one brand is being sponsored. Is even sponsoring the U.S. National Lacrosse League as the first company outside Coca-Cola to legally manufacture and distribute cocoa extracts globally on a commercial scale. We're redefining its role in the modern world, said Pat McEwen, CEO of Power Leaves Corp. By working hand in hand with Indigenous communities, we aim to expand global access to cocoa's benefits while preserving its cultural heritage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Aside from the WHO review, momentum for WHO review. I'm sorry, I think Dr. Zeus every time one of us says that. Momentum for reform is growing. Volker Turk, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, spoke at a high-level side event on coca in March of last year, which was also organized by Bolivia and Colombia, with support from Canada, Czechia, Malta, Mexico, and Switzerland.
Wow. Turk says that Indigenous peoples have been over-policed on practices such as subsistence cultivation of drug crops which may be used as traditional medicines, which are essential to their lives and livelihoods, and which hold deep cultural and spiritual significance. In February, the nonprofit McKenna Academy, in collaboration with Davies, will host a multidisciplinary summit on cocoa just outside of Cusco, Peru, called The Wisdom of the Leaf. Bolivian Vice President David, Vice President, will speak at the event in support of legalization.
Yeah, the natural coca leaf is like a dry seal that protects the identity of the Andean Amazonian ancestral peoples, Vice President David said. He told the UN this past April, the truth that the coca leaf is not a drug is gradually coming to the surface of the collective consciousness. Amazing. Keep working hard.
Yeah, and like what I see them focusing on is the leaf before it's been processed and all that. It's not as if, because people when they're high up in the mountains, they chew on it too in order to deal with the
altitude sickness.
Correct. So the it's a different thing.
Yep.
Right. So
very cool.
I could see where they're gonna get a lot. Like they say, they're gonna they don't expect it to. There's gonna be some pushback on things.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see the support from Canada on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
So, all right, we better get out of that. Was a long story, so I thought we'd go through it all because I wanted to see what all it was going to say. So we've got some short ones coming up, so that's
very good.
All right, next one's up.
Coming to us from StratCan, Canadian CEO sues U.S. agencies over harassment at the border for connections to cannabis industry.
Yeah, the CEO of a BC-based company that specializes in manufacturing, importing, and distributing agricultural machinery, including cannabis-related equipment, has sued the United States Department of Homeland Security, saying they detained, interrogated, and harassed him over the cannabis-related equipment his company sells. at first reported by Law 360. Aaron McKellar, the CEO of At-Eze Technologies, a custom engineering, design, and manufacturing firm based in Surrey, BC, is suing the U.S. agency after he was detained at the Blaine, Washington port of entry. At-Eze Technologies is the parent company of the Mobius and Terminator brands of cannabis industry equipment.
Wow.
They
Good for
didn't even have any cannabis on them. Just has to work for a cannabis company and be harassed.
Yeah. Yeah, you go, Aaron. In the court filing, McKellar says he believes U.S. Custom and Border Protection officials' actions were retaliatory and sought to harass and penalize McKellar for At-Eze's legal success in a previous case, which confirmed that At-Eze's cannabis-related equipment is entirely legal under U.S. law. Although McKellar says he provided information supporting his admissibility into the United States, including the court-approved legality of At-Eze's operations, he claims CBP officers made several comments to him, such as, "Your customers should buy from an American company and buy from an American citizen."
Well, that is none of their business. Court records say that CBP officers concluded that McKellar is knowingly and intentionally contributing to the proliferation of the cannabis industry in the United States and issued an expedient removal order against McKellar that included a 5-year entry ban and warnings that they attempted to re-enter the U.S. would lead to felony prosecution and imprisonment. What? CBP officers then also revoked his Nexus membership and confiscated his Nexus membership card.
For their part, the defendants, CBP, and the port director, Harmit S. Gill, are said to have refused to reconsider or vacate the enforcement and removal operations issued against McKellar, denying the reconsideration request. CBP's own actions in granting McKellar L1A work authorization on multiple occasions, including after the CIT decision, affirm that CBP provisionally found no basis or reason to believe his conduct was unlawful, reads the lawsuit.
It goes on to say that the absence of any facts or allegations against At-Eze undermines defendants' assertion that a reason to believe finding that plaintiffs are aiding and abetting narcotics trafficking is now warranted. The lawsuit also argues that the CPB's actions created fears of travel bans, expedited removal orders, and criminal prosecution for Canadian employees. McKellar alleges that these actions disrupt cross-border operations and harm At-Eze USA's competitiveness and collaboration with its Canadian counterpart, At-Eze Canada.
Concerns about legal Canadian cannabis companies doing business in the U.S. are not new. In 2018, the CEO of another Surrey, BC-based company that sells equipment to cannabis companies, Kingston Incorporated, was banned for life after CPB officers determined he was entering the country to do business with U.S. cannabis companies. McKellar is the co-founder and former COO of Kingston Incorporated, although he left the company in 2016. In 2018, the U.S. government clarified that while Canadian citizens working in or facilitating the proliferation of the legal cannabis industry in Canada who come to the U.S. for reasons unrelated to the cannabis industry will generally be admissible to the U.S. However, if a traveler is found to be coming to the U.S. for reasons related to the cannabis industry, the U.S. government says they may be deemed inadmissible.
So there's a big reason why they should legalize it federally, not state to state. Right.
Crazy.
All righty. On to our next story. And I'll tell you, even with this next story, the headline on it, I think it had both of us scratching our heads.
Yeah.
But here we go. This is what we're talking about.
Okay, coming to us from the Marijuana Herald, Colorado bill would ban cannabis with over 10% THC for those under 26, prohibit psilocybin edibles and prohibit psilocybin edibles.
Now, Senate Bill 76, supported by State Senators Judith Amabile and Byron Pelton, along with State Representative Kyle Brown, proposes new regulations on cannabis potency, labeling, and psilocybin product restrictions. The bill has been referred to as the Senate Business, Labor, and Technology Committee. As written, SB 25-076 would prevent individuals aged 21 to 25 from purchasing recreational cannabis with potencies exceeding 10% THC, as well as inhaled products containing flavors, including terpenes. Wow. These restrictions would apply to dispensaries and cannabis hospitality establishments. The bill also includes new labeling requirements based on THC content and would limit inhalable cannabis products packaging to 500 milligrams.
Colorado.
Colorado.
A color-coded labeling system would be implemented to indicate THC levels with different colors representing potency thresholds. The bill also proposes additional limits on serving and packaging size for certain cannabis products. In addition to cannabis regulations, the bill would prohibit licensed manufacturers from producing psilocybin edibles with added flavors or sweeteners, including candies, gummies, and chocolates. While Colorado law allows the production of psilocybin capsules, tablets, tinctures, and tea bags, the bill seeks to limit products that could be seen as more appealing for younger individuals.
Opponents arguing that the age restriction and product bans could reduce legal market access, drive consumers to the illicit market, and impact tax revenue. In addition to being arbitrary and unnecessary, the bill now awaits a hearing in the Senate Business, Labor, and Technology Committee. Are they worried that of the developing brain? They don't mention anything about that in there.
Yeah, they didn't say why.
They don't really say why. Why are they reducing it for that age group? But what can you do? I'm sure there's going to be some pushback or something. Somebody would be voicing their displeasure with something about that, I would think. So. Yeah. All righty, here we go. On to the next story.
Coming to us from the International Cannabis Business Conference, Canadian patents report significant reductions in pain following cannabis use.
Yes, exactly. Canada was at the forefront of medical cannabis policy modernization, having adopted national medical cannabis reform in 2001. Canada remains an international leader in the emerging legal global medical cannabis industry, an industry that continues to experience tremendous growth. According to a recent market analysis by the business research company, the legal global medical cannabis industry is projected to rise from $27.5 billion in 2023 to $33.3 billion in 2024, reflecting a compound annual growth rate of 21%, and is expected to reach $72.9 billion by 2028.
A major driver in the expanding legal medical cannabis industry is patients using medical cannabis to treat chronic pain. A recent study conducted in Canada found that suffering patients report significant reductions in pain following medicinal cannabis use. Below is more information about the study and its results via a news release from Normal if you want to go right there.
Yeah, or we'll just continue on with this story.
We will. Yes. In Hamilton, Canada, cannabis products provide short-term relief for patients suffering from chronic muscle or joint problems or nerve pain, according to data published in the journal Cannabis.
Canadian investigators assessed the short-term effects of cannabis on chronic pain in a cohort of 741 individuals over a 3+ year period. Study participants self-administered cannabis products at home and reported symptom changes in real time on a mobile software application. It's called StrainPrint. Most participants inhaled botanical cannabis. 21% ingested cannabis oil extracts. Changes in participants' pain scores was assessed using a 10-point scale. On average, subjects reported a 3-point reduction in their pain scores following cannabis use. Male participants were more likely than females to experience greater pain relief. Greater efficacy was associated with products either dominant or balanced in THC content as compared to CBD dominant products.
Our analysis of observational data from chronic pain patients who use medicinal cannabis found large reductions in pain, and that men were more likely to experience greater pain relief than women, the study's authors concluded. Our findings require confirmation in rigorous conducted randomized trials that include a placebo control to account for non-specific effects. Separate data published in 2023 in the Journal of the American Medical Association reported that nearly 1 in 3 patients with chronic pain use cannabis as an analgesic agent, and many of those who do substitute it in place of opioids.
Yes, they do. They sure do. Oh, yes. I know. Yeah, that's what I've always said. I'm glad that I chose cannabis over opioid therapy when I got my Crohn's. So, all right. I see that we have got our 4 stories done, and it is time for us to take a break.
Okay.
And all right, we'll be right back.
You're listening to the P.A.C.E Radio Network here at PACEradio.net.
Legacy 420 have an awesome array of cannabis-infused beverages, from pop to Nature's Nectar's teas, all in amazing flavors. What a selection. We even have a delicious mango-infused juice, and let me tell you, it's delicious.
Everything is infused in-house, so we buy our syrup from, the same place where everybody else buys their syrup for their pop, and the infusion is done in the lab. It's all canned here, labeled here, produced 100% on Tyndonega.
We have 2 lines of drinks. One is called our Nature's Nectar. That was our original line that we came out with. And then we also have a line under the Red-E brand. We have them in 10 milligrams, 30 milligram, and 60 milligram cans.
What a great selection for a get-together with friends or after a long day. Remember, if you want to wet your whistle with on-site lab-tested products, come see your trusted partner. Legacy 420 out on your road.
Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. Open Monday to Friday from 10 till 7 p.m. or by chance. Check out our flags, our t-shirts, plus our hats, and look of that supply of rolling papers, plus much more. We've got bongs and your favorite herbal vaporizers. Look at all the incense we have, as well as for those who collect knives, check out these knives in our collection. And while you're here, stop in to see Shay at the piercing room, where you can get poked by Shay. Daily deals, check them out. Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford, Ontario. Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Are you looking for non-stop, continuous cannabis and psychedelic programming? If you are, then turn your browsers to 420radio.ca or PACEradio.net, where you will find the 420 Pace re-rolled Saturday. Everything gets started at 8 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at PACEradio.net.
Hey, you're back with psychedelics and cannabis educational news. Well, Cindy, we got 4 more stories to go, and it looks like we got about 25 minutes to try to squeeze that in. And I know that first one's a big doozy, just like our other first ones. All right, here we go. It's up.
Okay. Coming to us from Post, psychedelic use linked to lower fear of death through enhanced transcendence beliefs.
All right. A recent study published in the Journal of Psychoactive Drugs suggests that people who use psychedelic substances may experience less anxiety about death compared to those who do not. The research indicates that this reduced fear is not directly caused by the drugs themselves, but rather by the experiences of transcending death that these substances can facilitate. These experiences involve a sense of continuity beyond physical death, either through spiritual beliefs or a lasting legacy. Death anxiety, or the distress caused by the awareness of mortality, is a universal experience. It often manifests in various ways, from fear of illness and loss of control to avoidance of death-related discussions. Motivated by the growing interest in the therapeutic potential of psychedelics, the researchers sought to investigate whether people who use psychedelics exhibit lower levels of death anxiety compared to those who do not.
Yeah, my interest in this topic originates from my primary research area, hospice and palliative care. Thetanology, the study of death and dying, is closely intertwined with end-of-life care and the themes of mortality and finitude, said study author Ana Garcia of the State University of Campinas in Brazil. I have a strong academic and personal curiosity about exploring issues related to death, dying, and how people confront their own mortality. Death anxiety is a relatively common phenomenon, as many individuals fear or are apprehensive about death. My goal was to investigate whether and how psychedelics influence death anxiety, particularly given their reported potential to evoke profound psychological and spiritual experiences that may help individuals better cope with existential concerns.
The study employed a cross-sectional design, recruiting 517 adult participants in Brazil through social media and messaging platforms using a snowball sampling strategy. Participants ranged in the age from 19 to 76, with a mean age of 38.7 years, and 70% identified as female. To measure death anxiety, the researchers used a validated Brazilian version of the death anxiety scale, which consists of 15 items that assess individuals' emotional reactions to the anticipation of death. Participants also completed the death transition scale, which evaluates the perceptions of continuity beyond physical death across religious, mystical, and creative dimensions, among others. Additionally, the study included the spiritual well-being scale to assess participants' sense of purpose and satisfaction with life.
Participants were asked about their use of psychedelics, including substances such as LSD, psilocybin, ayahuasca, DMT. The frequency of use was categorized as never almost never, occasionally, frequently. They also provided information about their age, gender, education level, and whether they regularly engaged in discussions about mortality. The results showed a consistent relationship between psychedelic use and lower levels of death anxiety. Individuals who reported frequent or occasional use of psychedelics, particularly substances like LSD, psilocybin, ayahuasca, and DMT, exhibited lower scores on the death anxiety scale compared to those who had never or almost never used these substances.
The findings also highlighted the role of death transcendence in explaining these reductions among various dimensions of death transcendence. There it is again. The researchers identified religious and mystical experiences as being particularly influential in lowering death anxiety. Participants who reported stronger beliefs in life after death, or who had experienced feelings of unity and interconnectedness during mystical states, tended to have less anxiety about death. On the other hand, individuals with stronger focus on symbolic or creative forms of transcendence, such as leaving a lasting legacy through artistic or scientific contributions, exhibited higher levels of death anxiety, potentially reflecting a heightened awareness of their mortality.
Wow. In our study, we investigated death anxiety and transcendence of death, among other variables, among users and non-users of psychedelics. Mesquite Garcia told SciPost. The results of our study suggest that psychedelics favor the transcendence of death. That is, the perception of the possibility of continued existence in symbolic or spiritual terms, even after physical death. And it is the possibility of transcending death that contributes to reducing death anxiety. In other words, psychedelics facilitate the transcendence of death, and this, in turn, helps to reduce death anxiety. One result that surprised me was the indication that what reduces death anxiety is not the psychedelics themselves, but the transcendence of death they facilitate. Psychedelics promote experiences of death transcendence, which then reduce death anxiety. This suggests that humans are inherently spiritual beings, regardless of religious affiliation. Spirituality relates to our innate need for transcendence, the search for purpose, meaning, and significance in life. This finding highlights the deep psychological and existential mechanisms at play, suggesting that addressing the spiritual dimension of human existence is central to alleviating death anxiety.
While the study shed new light on the relationship between psychedelic use and death anxiety, it had some limitations because it was an observational study relying on self-reported data. It is not possible to establish a direct causal relationship between psychedelic use and reduced death anxiety. Well, we had a fellow here in Canada with the mushrooms who was using these mushrooms because of anxiety.
Yep.
Right. So, just because of the time wise, is there anything else you want to cover on this story?
No, I think we got we got most of it.
I think we got her covered. Okay. All righty. Yeah, just looking at the time there. All righty, I got the next one lined up. But yeah, that's interesting. And you know, people do use it in order to help with the anxiety, you know, for death.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. It's a big component of participants.
Yeah. Yeah. All righty. Next story is up.
Okay. Coming to us from Source NM, lawmakers propose legalizing medicinal magic mushrooms use in New Mexico.
There you go. A group of lawmakers introduced a proposal Thursday to establish a program for medicinal use of psilocybin mushrooms, and I'm sure they could establish it for anxiety for death. Yes. Now, according to a news release, Senate Bill 219, the Medical Psilocybin Act, would create a program for New Mexicans to receive medicinal treatments for pre-qualified behavioral health conditions such as major depression, major treatment-resistant depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance use disorder, end-of-life care, and others approved by the Department of Health. Just on a note here, Cindy, I was talking to one fellow, and he talked about he'd like to see them use the word instead of disorder, symptoms. He would like them to see the word symptoms instead of disorder, because
I like the word injury, post-traumatic stress injury.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah. Okay, carry on.
According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, psilocybin is a chemical found in certain mushrooms, often called magic mushrooms, which have historically been used recreationally or in traditional ceremonies. It is also being researched as a clinical treatment for substance use disorders and other mental injuries or illnesses. As an integrative psychiatric provider in the state of New Mexico, I strongly support the need of new tools such as medical psilocybin to assist the rising number of New Mexicans with mental health needs. This is being said by Deborah Thorne, who is a doctor of medicinal science and certified integrative psychiatry specialist in La Cruces. She goes on to say the Medical Psilocybin Act will provide an equitable, safe, and well-monitored means of offering this valuable medicine to many while strengthening the ongoing research at UNM.
The bill would establish an advisory board, treatment equity fund, and research fund, as well as remove psilocybin from the Controlled Substances Act to protect qualified and registered patients, clinicians, and producers, according to news released jointly by the Office of the Senate and the House Democrats. If passed, the law states that the program will be available by December the 31st, 2027.
Corresponder Senator Craig Brandt said in a statement that he is hopeful this treatment option will benefit his fellow veterans who may be dealing with PTSD or other mental health injuries or conditions. When we're facing epidemic levels of depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other debilitating mental health conditions, we owe it to those suffering to explore promising new treatments like psilocybin. And this is coming from Representative Liz Thompson. By establishing a highly regulated state-run program, we can provide alternative options to those not responding to modern treatment in a safe, controlled environment.
Sponsors introduced the SB 19 on the floor Thursday and will present it in the Senate Tax, Business, and Transportation Committee. The bill has not been set for committee as of press time. So there you go.
Interesting.
Legal magic mushrooms coming to Texas. New Mexico. Yeah, there we go. New Mexico. For medicinal purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is always good. All righty. There we go. I'll get the next one lined up. I'm sure this one's I'm probably gonna have a few negative things to say during this one. Okay, here we go.
Coming to us from Business of Cannabis, hypocritical and disappointing. Labor's tired excuses on medical cannabis reform show nothing has changed.
Yeah, now the reason I said that, Cindy, was because I've recently had a story where they have parents with children that are trying to get access to medicinal cannabis, and only like 5 kids who got access. There's hundreds of kids that could have that need access to it, and they're not getting it, and they're having to buy it online in other ways.
Yep.
So yeah, their program needs to change this. That's for sure. So here we go. Yesterday, the first parliamentary debate on medical cannabis in the UK under the new Labour administration shattered the hopes of a more progressive stance on reform. Poof, there you go. Despite impassioned speeches from members of various parties, unanimously calling for the UK's patchwork of cannabis regulation to be revisited and reformed, the government responded with the same tiring reason for the lack of progress as the previous administration.
This was all the more frustrating given that Labour ministers of state for Health and Social Care, Karen Smith, has herself delivered heartfelt pleas for government action on medical cannabis reform while in opposition. However, now in power, it seems Smith has retreated to the same boilerplate responses she has previously criticized, telling the room, before we see routine prescribing of these unlicensed medicines, the NHS must have greater assurance on the clinical and cost effectiveness of these medicines. I wonder who paid her off.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah, like you got kids that, it's kids don't lie. Young babies, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, they don't lie. You can see the effects on them. Like Christ. All right. Matt Hughes, co-founder and director of MedCan Family Foundation, which helps parents and carers of children with epilepsy, was present at the debate. Despite forthcoming support for his organization's campaign while in opposition, he says the party's position appears to have changed in recent months.
Our recent paper, Open Secrets, highlighted the desperate situation that hundreds of families in the UK currently find themselves in, forced to resort to illegal cannabis products due to the barriers to NHS prescribing, he explained, adding that the government is fully aware of this but is choosing not to act. Labour's support for our campaign while in opposition was commendable, making today's response all the more disappointing. Despite previous conversations with the DOH under the former government, Labour has now made it clear they are unwilling to engage with MedCan or take proactive steps to protect our vulnerable children.
The Open Secret story that they mentioned there in that quote, that was the story that I was referring to with the hundreds of kids. Yeah. After the opening remarks from the DUP's Jim Shannon, a long-time proponent of reform, laid out a comprehensive argument for why the current system needs changing. Other arguments from across the political spectrum added weight to each of these new well-worn points. However, it was the Conservatives' Dr. Luke Evans who presented the most damning case against the government's continued inaction.
He highlighted a particularly strong contribution from the then shadow health minister, Ms. Smith, during a similar debate on medical cannabis from 2021. Given that she now holds power, Evans told the room, I feel it's fair to ask her the very same question she posed to the then minister.
Nice. Quoting her contribution directly, he continued, it would be helpful if the minister could set up what steps he is taking to empower and accelerate research in this space. I hope he will not dodge the question by saying that this issue is simply one for clinicians. The government has a responsibility.
Yes. Goes on to say there seems to be a lack of urgency on this issue, which is concerning. People are suffering right now. We have heard again and again about children suffering from seizures, sometimes over 100 per day. Accessing care is, in some cases, pushing families to the brink of destitution. We should do everything we can to support these people. If research is needed before clinicians feel comfortable prescribing, then it is incumbent of this government to support clinicians. We need more streamlined clinical trials and better engagement with clinicians. We do not want to be back here in 2 years rerunning this same debate.
He concluded by asking her, as she did 4 years earlier, what steps she has taken to accelerate research, streamline trials, empower clinicians, or most crucially, support patients. Way to go, buddy. For the patients, family members, and the advocates present at the debate, the response was not just disappointingly familiar, but also smacked of hypocrisy.
In her own words, Miss Smith dodged the question by saying that this issue is simply one for clinicians. Wow, we are here as politicians, and it is right that whether to it is right that whether to prescribe any medicine or treatment is a clinical decision, whether on the NHS or privately. It is not for us to influence these decisions, so I cannot comment on individual cases here today.
As for the government's responsibility to empower and accelerate research in this space, the onus has once again been passed directly to businesses to fund, supply, and conduct the research. Sounds familiar. The National Institute of Health and Care Research and the MHRA are there to support the manufacturers and researchers to develop new medicines to decide quality studies. So I strongly encourage the manufacturers of these products to invest in research to prove they are safe and effective and meet the rigorous standards we rightly expected for all medicines.
Despite stating that her government had inherited a broken system from the former administration, something few could argue with, Ms. Smith was happy to take credit for the only medical cannabis clinical trials currently taking place in the UK. I want to thank the Office of the Spokesperson for reading out my contribution and highlighting how proactive we have been. Just 7 months into this new government, I am proud that the trials we are conducting are world first initiatives.
Yeah. We're not waiting for the industry to respond to patient voices. The NIHR and NHS England have recently confirmed over £8.5 million in funding for clinical trials to investigate whether cannabis-based medicines are effective in the treatment of drug-resistant epilepsies. You got a lot of kids that are waiting. Get your work done, would you? Like, holy smokes. This trial being conducted by the University College London and Great Ormond Street Hospital was announced in October of 2024, but first planned around 5 years ago, initiated by the BPNA, which is the British Pediatric Neurology Association.
The second trial into CBD in patients with neuropathic pain being conducted by the University of Edinburgh was announced back in 2023. As Conservative MP Jerome Mayhew argued, medical cannabis medications are personalized treatments tailored to individual patients.
He continued by saying, however, we persist in applying a randomized controlled trial model, which is not appropriate for personalized medication. As a result, licensing for these treatments is being blocked, even when anecdotal evidence overwhelmingly supports or suggests they are effective. Look at the kids, people. But let's be clear, this problem is solvable. Licensing systems for medicinal cannabis have been effectively implemented elsewhere. If those first world countries have developed safe and effective licensing models, then why can't we?
Yeah, rejecting calls for a canceled observational study with a small cohort to be relaunched. Ms. Smith said it would not produce results as robust and randomized controlled trial, which is the gold standard for clinical trials, nor would it add to the current evidence base.
Alrighty. We got one more story to go here. And I see we're pretty close to the end of the day anyways, time-wise, but this is another study. So let's get at her and finish her up.
Absolutely. Coming to us from International Cannabis Business Conference, legal retail cannabis isn't associated with rise in emergency department visits.
Yes. Canada was not the first country to adopt the national adult use cannabis legalization measure. Their distinct title goes to Uruguay, which legalized recreational cannabis back in 2013, 5 years before Canada did. However, Canada was the first G7 nation to legalize recreational cannabis and remain the largest legal adult use cannabis commerce experiment on the earth. According to a recent market analysis by Researcher Markets, revenue generated by Canada's legal cannabis cultivators has ballooned at a CAGR of 43.4% to reach $13.1 billion over the past 5 years.
Canadian cannabis companies dominate the legal global cannabis industry as industry that analysts at the business research company estimate was worth $21.79 billion in 2023 and $26.56 billion in 2024, and is projected to grow to an estimated $58.93 billion by 2028 at a CAGR of 22.0. Researchers at Allied Analytics offer up even rosier estimates and projections, finding that the legal cannabis market was valued at $25.7 billion in 2021 and is estimated to reach $148.9 billion by 2031, growing at a CAGR of 20.1% from 2022 to 2031.
A common claim made by cannabis opponents who try to thwart the growth of the emerging legal cannabis industry hinges on emergency room visits spiking due to cannabis legalization. The results of a recent study conducted in Canada threw cold water on those claims. A team of Canadian researchers assessed the impact of the cannabis store openings in emergency day visits in 278 communities in Ontario.
Wow.
Yeah.
They found no evidence that the allocation of cannabis retailer license led to changes in cannabis-related ED visits. Similarly, no changes in emergency department visits related to either alcohol use or opiates were identified.
Despite the anticipation that the introduction of licensed cannabis retailers might influence such health outcomes, our findings suggest no significant changes in emergency department visit rates following the allocation of retail licenses, the study's authors concluded. They go on to say the research highlights the complex relationship between the availability of cannabis retail options and public health metrics. Given these findings, policymakers may consider focusing on understanding the regional factors, example, cannabis pricing and retailers' hours of operation, beyond retail vicinity that could influence substance-related health outcomes.
Other studies have failed to identify any association between dispensary openings and rising local crime rates. Studies have documented a relationship between dispensary openings, rising home values, and reductions in opiate-related mortalities, by the way.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. It's always good news.
It is.
You know, that they would, that was always a fear, all the emergency rooms, just like all the car crashes were going to happen and the sky was going to fall, right?
Yep.
And none of that seemed to happen.
Not at all.
No, exactly. All right. Anything else? Anything else offhand?
I don't think so. I think that's about it. We did the stories. We got her done.
That's right. All right. Okay. That's it. From the Legacy420.com news desk, that's our news report for today. Thanks to our buds at the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, Limestone City, Hydroponics.ca, At-Eze.ca, and Legacy420.com. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you all Thursday. Right?
Yes,
and
Thursday.
Other than that, thanks for watching. Don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the P.A.C.E Radio Network here at PACERadio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20 is so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partners 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420 enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more. We've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at PACEradio.net.